JPII, and you guys are here to really tell us, the administration and the council, what you guys have in mind. Student Voice is a really big project we started here at Pope this year, along with, as I said, administration and council. And we're really here to, with open ears. And just want to let you guys know that this is an open space, that you guys have a right to your opinions. But at the same time, you guys have to keep in mind that you want to keep it respectful, that no names are being said, in case you guys have complaints. Yeah, we're gonna get right into the introductions. I'm David, as you guys may know. I'm Vice President of BSC.
I'm Gabe from PAC, and if you guys have any concerns about sports or stuff that we do, you guys come to us.
Hi, I'm Troyana. I'm the publicity representative for PAC. Hi guys, I'm the competitive director for DECA.
Hi guys,
Nero.
Hi, my name's Nero. I'm the publicity rep for DECA.
Hi, I'm
Alicia.
Alicia. Hi, I'm Selena from BC. Hi, I'm Kaylee from BC.
Okay, we're just gonna Mr. Wetzel have a few words.
Yeah, so this was an initiative that I wanted to start and didn't know exactly how to. So we had a meeting with reps from the councils and talked about how do we get this together? How do we get student voice? How do we bring it together? And then how do we respond to it? So we've already done a few things with that. Just as far as, for our authenticity's sake, we're keeping these notes, and these notes are on a Google Doc, so they'll be published out so you can view them afterwards from all the grades to see what everybody has. And again, it is being live streamed, and it's going to do that's on YouTube. So it's recorded and it'll be on YouTube as well. So you can go back and watch 45 minutes of us talking. But that way we can review it, we can go back. I've already sent a clip to one of our superintendents for something that we're very interested in doing. So there's a lot of attention that's being paid to this. So it's really good and a really good idea to not only hear your concerns, but to respond to them as well. That's what we're going to try to do.
Okay, so to get started, we'll be talking about hall passes. So as we all know, hall passes are new this year. They were in place to ensure safety within the school. So right now what we're wondering is just your opinion on whether or not do you think the hall passes are effective? Do you like them?
What was it that
Any concerns? Okay, so my homeroom class, we were basically talking about something that a lot of people have said about the hall passes, which is like the sanitary issue. We really don't like having to like touch them, even though you use hand sanitizer. It's like it still feels a little bit like unclean in a way because like other people touch them and like some people are like really picky about germs. So I don't know like what we can do about that because like I know we kind of have to have them, but a lot of people are like used to just going to the washroom and not having to worry about taking a hall pass. And sometimes our hall passes, like students don't return them sometimes, so then teachers are always asking like where the hall pass is, and they don't have two to send out so a student can go to the bathroom. So what we can do about that?
Yeah, so I mean I've said this to every group because they've all talked about the sanitation issue, and when the idea for the hall pass was not ours as far as administration. It was a group of teachers who came to us at the end of last year and said we really need to do something about attendance, yes, but then students are in the school but not attending classes all the time, or are missing large chunks of classes because they're taking a walk and getting diverted and those sorts of things. And so how do we monitor that? How do you monitor that in a school this size with this many students? And so there was the idea of the hall passes, and I've been on record as saying when the idea was brought up, I thought it wasn't going to work. I didn't think it was going to work at all. And I still said, okay, we'll buy it, and we bought a machine. Like we thought at the beginning that we would just do it sort of on the cheap as a test, and just get those badges that you get when you go to like a conference or something. You get at Staples, the plastic ones with the paper insert. And we thought, well, those will get shabby, and there's a lot more problems with that. So we thought the credit card style that we have, so we had to buy a card maker, and we did that. But I really didn't even think about the sanitation thing. I really didn't even cross my mind. And then some teachers brought it up. So then what did we do to try to address that? We tried to address it with every department. I went literally on the weekend with my kids one weekend and bought all the antibacterial spray that two Targets had. And so every department has those, so the teachers can spray those down. And I think some of them are doing that in class anyway. And then bought all of the little Purell containers. We have some more of that coming as well. There's some great suggestions about, could we put more Purell dispensers or sanitizer dispensers in the hallways around the bathrooms and all that stuff. And I think we're going to definitely do that as well. That was a great suggestion. Some people are concerned about the fact that it's the lanyards, they're cloth. The cards aren't an issue because they're plastic and because they're, bacteria won't stick to those as easily, but maybe that can get into the cloth of the lanyards. We have lots of those lanyards. Those lanyards are from years ago. The students here at the school, there was an initiative that every single student had to wear their student ID around their neck at all times. So every student was given those. So we have, I couldn't even tell you how many are, and yeah, it's probably 2,000 of them. So we can replace those on a pretty regular basis. Those are lanyards that don't look like anything else. Like there's no other lanyards like them in the school. Teachers have different lanyards, and some of the other staff have different lanyards. So those are entirely different. Some people have said, well, why not just have it something that you can clip on? I don't know why that's better. But I think the lanyards are good because I know some people just throw it in their pocket because they don't want it around their neck. And if you see me, when I'm walking the halls, if I see that lanyard, because no one else has that, that's the only thing that goes on, that's good enough for me. If they have that lanyard, I'm saying, I'm good. Now, if I see that student a few times, I say, let's take a look at this. And then I know what class they're in, and so let's go back to that class and stuff like that. So I think I'm incredibly impressed at how well it's working. I mean, I think you have to realize that if you take a look in the hallways at any given time, there's not that many as there was in the past. I mean, you guys have to get more experience in the grade 9s and 10s in that way. So, but we're always tweaking, and I think the idea of could we have some more sanitation stuff around the school is something that we're definitely going to do.
Okay, so some feedback and opinion on the class that we present. So on behalf of the class, we find that the hall passes are actually effective and reduces the number of people in the hallways that we see whenever we go and grab 65 lockers or something like that. So it is working in our opinion.
That's good. And that was one of the things I forgot to mention. It's a real good idea. One of the things we want to hear about today is not only those things that are of concern to people, but those things you think are effective and working, because again, there's only so many people, there's only so much money in the school, there's only so many teachers that can start programs or do things, so that if there's a new initiative that we have to come up with that comes out of these, maybe something's going to have to go. Maybe something stops. And what we don't want to do is stop the things that are working really well. So if it's just about complaints or if it's just about negative, then we're not going to see what really works. So that's a great thing. So if there's something that you think is effective, saying you want to make sure you keep going with this, and we'd like to hear that as well.
So with our class, we also feel like it is very effective because it's keeping us for the safety reasons. And I know a lot of people have complained about the sanitation-wise. But one of the things that our classmates have found is that maybe we should have a sign in and sign out sheet with the landmarks. So at least, first of all, it would be less sanitary, so people would stop complaining about it. And also, sorry, I'm so nervous. It would also have records of how where students are and their whereabouts. So.
And that's a great suggestion that might be put forward to the teachers. Again, we've left it to the teachers to say you're going to moderate how you use these. We gave everybody 2, and there's still some debate about this is a work in progress, like anything, right? We may increase or decrease. Then 2, if you're getting to 3, all of a sudden it's like, what's the point of a pass if there's 20 passes in a class and there's really no point to it. But we're left it to say, how are you going to use them and how are you going to moderate them? How are you going to record them? Keep track of them, those sorts of things. So that's a good suggestion that maybe that as they're signing out, that way, if one doesn't come back, everybody's aware of where or who had the last one, for sure. But we've said, oh, I left it on the door of the class. I came back and the class was locked, so I just left it on the door of the class. And we've actually been able to look on the security cameras and say, oh, that was taken by this teacher just grabbed it, so we know where to get it back. So we've been pretty diligent about trying to track those ones down. And if there's, if there's loss here and there, then that's fine. We can reprint them, but I don't want to be just printing more and more because then there really isn't a point to having them.
Oh, for the sign in and sign out sheet, we should have a sign in and sign out machine with our student ID, so it tracks us to class and when do we come back in.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a great idea if, like I said, the budget is the issue, right? I mean, because you can imagine in a school of our size, there's around 60 classrooms, right, at any given time. So, and there's about 60 classrooms in the school. So you can imagine the cost of anything times that by at least 60, right? And then you're also saying, what do I need to spend money on? Is there technology is great. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm one of the big proponents of it, but sometimes it's, can we spend money on the technology of paper and pen so that we don't need the technology of, machines and stuff like that? Because there's a limited amount of budget in saying, if I spend it on Chromebooks, laptops, iPads, sports teams, trips, those sorts of things, right?
Hello. I think the hall pass is a good idea, but I think other people don't want to do it because when they have it, they don't have an excuse to go outside and talk to their friends. So they complain about it. But my reason, my problem is cafeteria. The chairs, the one don't have the stool to sit on, the iron that pops out, that's very dangerous. Like one time I slipped on it, so it hurts. I think that should be replaced because that's more serious. And also the prices on the cafeteria food, it raises. So I was wondering why.
And that brings us into our next topic with the cap and everything regarding lunch. Gabriel will continue on.
Yeah, as you guys know, this is the second year at Pope, and a lot of things have changed throughout the years. One of the things that I'm trying to implement this year is to encourage us to go to the cafeteria, but then we're like a lot of students, so there's actually not that much space. And then we don't want to be going to like outside places like Popeyes or like eating the halls. So what do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about the cafeteria and other problems that you guys might have?
When we had our discussion with our class, there were a lot of people who had issues with sitting in the caf as well as eating in the hallways because a lot of people like to study at lunch and also the caf is really loud and doesn't have necessarily enough room for everyone. So I think a lot of people just want that ability to be able to eat in the hallways as well as better lighting in the hallways, which is what a lot of people said as well.
Well, that's great. So there's a lot of stuff there. So I would say for sure the cafeteria is a concern of ours. And the reason for that is this, and I think we need to sort of give it a little bit of context, right? The way schools are built is they have architects who look at it and say, okay, how many students are going to be in the school? So then we have an X number of square footage that goes toward cafeteria, X number of square footage that goes towards all these sorts of things. You may not be aware, but there are 1,400 students in our school, and the school was built, well, it was started to be built 31 years ago, and it really was finished about 25 years ago. The school was built to house around 1,000 students, a little bit more than 1,000 students. That's why we have 13 portables. So the cafeteria isn't big enough. So as many of you know, I was a student here. A lot of your teachers were students here. So when I was a student here, way back in the late 80s and early 90s, before any of you were born, I love that. Anyway, when I was here, we actually had 3 lunches. So you had the same lunches as we have now. First lunch, which is after 2 periods, right? The third lunch was after your 3 periods. And the middle lunch was actually, you would go to third period, half of that period, and then have lunch, and then come back and do another half of the period. That is not a great idea. The teachers really don't like that because if you teach in that period, or if you have class in that period, you really don't get the full time. Because by the time people get back, there's such a lack of continuity there. So that was not a really good idea, but that's how we addressed it at the time. Particularly the fact that when I started here as a student, this whole back wing, the whole English hallway and all that wasn't there. So that wasn't added until my 3rd year in the student year. And then there was a little bit more space. And with that came that bigger pit behind the cafeteria, the deeper one that you can walk into, that wasn't there. So that was what was added And there's a reason why it was so close to the cafeteria. There's actually doors that go through into the servery, although those have been locked off because there's some storage back there. So that was why that was added. And so that's what we're looking at is, can we repurpose that as a space to eat? I know there's not enough room. I'm not a fan of eating in the hallways. There's reasons for that. One is a lot of teachers are complaining, because remember, if you're eating in the hallways, there's classes still going on, right? Half the school is in classes. And we've had to deal with a lot of students who are, loud and they're talking like they would, but there's classes going on inside. And you might realize that when you're in third period class, if you are in particularly the English hallway, because they have the alcoves there and it's a little wider hallway, brighter lights, so people like to eat in there. That's one of the issues. The other issue is, I don't know if you've ever walked through the hallways after lunch. It's disgusting. I mean, and that's on, I'll be frank and direct, that's on you guys. I mean, the fact that people just must eat and just drop food and walk away. Now, how can we address that? We can put more garbage cans, but if you look at the ledges on the windows, there's just stuff that people just leave on the floor. And it's just like a full meal, they just drop it and leave. And so what happens with that? If you notice, this school is pretty big, and there's 2 or 3 caretakers in the school at any given time. That's it. So what should they be doing after lunch? They should be cleaning the cafeteria and maybe the pit area and around that. But what they have to do now is they have to walk all the way around, and they're cleaning everything. I mean, we even had some students who were eating in the change rooms. That's going to stop because those are locked. But that's foul that they eat in the change rooms, and that's just awful because you can't get in there and clean. I mean, there's only so many people. So what could we do? Is partially my question. I'll tell you one thing that we are going to do. The large pit area there, we're going to try to repurpose that. So I've ordered 10 cafe-style tables. So they're the high tables. So there's no chairs because there's just not enough room down in there in the flat part to have chairs or the big long benches. So we have the cafeteria table, so you can stand and you can eat, you can do some work. That's going to be in there up on the top as well. So it's going to be kind of an auxiliary, if you want to call it cafeteria, an extra part where you could gather, because there's actually a lot of floor space in the bottom part. The stairs are one thing, but in the bottom part, there's actually a lot of space. So we want to try to make that area. So if you have ideas, if you want to go back to your homerooms and say, what could be some ideas for things that would keep people there? That would be great, for sure. The other issue is about the cafeteria food itself, prices and food options. I'd like to hear some more suggestions about that here, but let me just preface that by saying, understand that the food is a catering company. That is not us. We do not run the cafeteria. It's a private company that runs that. So they have to make profit, right? It's not like if we ran the cafeteria somehow, I don't know how to do that. If we ran the cafeteria, we wouldn't be looking to make any profit. We would just be breaking even. But they need to make profit, right? That's the whole point of the company. So that's their pricing is their business. They are governed by rules as far as what they can offer for food-wise, right? You notice there's no sugar drinks. It's all diet. It's no thing. There's no deep fried food anymore. They had the fryers taken out for safety reasons. So they're governed by food acts and stuff like that that they can't deviate from. But within those parameters, there's lots of alternatives. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about your concerns or your suggestions, even better, for the actual food that would keep students here. Because I'd like to have 1,400 students eating lunch in the school. I'd like to put Popeyes out of business, to be completely honest with you. There's no reason that people need to go down there. So what other suggestions did anybody come up with or concerns?
Hi. What our class was thinking is during the lunch, now in the cafeteria, we're required to be in full uniform. And we think that it's driving away students as well from staying in the cafeteria because it is our lunch and we should be able to wear a sweater on top of our uniform because we're still wearing our collared shirts, the shoes, the pants, but we just want to wear a sweater on top because when eating, sometimes we can drop food on our clothing and the uniform shirts are kind of expensive and costly, so we want to keep them clean as well. So
if I talked to McCarthy's about a uniform bib, would you go for that? No? I like your excuses. I just want to keep my uniform clean. That's why I want to wear a sweat top over my uniform.
white shirts.
Very good. Yeah, I mean, there's a slippery slope that goes down when it comes with uniforms, right? And I think a lot of schools, including ours, has seen that. So when you start to deviate, it starts to slide down and down and down. All of a sudden, it's, well, why can't we wear sweat? Why can't we? Why can't we? I'm willing to sort of consider that a little bit and sort of see what's our rule on that. My question would be, other than the pure white sanitation of your uniform shirt. My question would be, why do you need to wear a sweat top if you're not going outside? Like the only reason you need to is if you were going to go down to the store, really. So I know some people go to the store, get their pizza or whatever, come back and eat it in the caf, and then they're still wearing a sweat top. And so that's where some of the concern is. But if you're eating in the school, then there's no reason to really have that.
Actually, sometimes the school is pretty cold.
That's another issue that we're going to talk about. That's come up before about the facility and the radical temperate zones that exist in the school, and we'll get into that in a little bit as well. I'd like to get some feedback on that as well, but I'm willing to consider that one a little bit and take that into consideration. But I'm very hesitant about the uniform, because if you start down that road, it's a tough one to get back from. Any other suggestions about the cafeteria?
Okay, so about the cafeteria, so like a lot of people say they want quiet to like study, and other people want music. So I feel like we should have a compromise where like some days we should play music for the people who want it, and sometimes we should just keep it quiet for the people who want to study, because at the same time, it's our lunchtime. We should like be able to listen to the music we want to. And like if you want to study, you should study on your own time, even though like like people should study on their own time at home, because like I assume like we do have the time, we just don't want to. So like it's kind of like really hard to like make that decision, like if we should play music or not. So that's why I say like we should have certain days. Like on Fridays, of course, we should play music because it's the last day of the week.
Okay, so there's suggestions about some people want it to be quiet, some people want it to be more enjoyable. I like the idea of music. There's some complications that come with that, right? It's like who vets the music, and what I mean by vets the music is who okays a playlist. Because again, if it's played in the school, then I'm responsible for that. So all I need is somebody to complain that, oh, there was this profanity in it and this, that, and then the whole thing shuts down. So you want to be able to do it right. I think that's a good idea. We just purchased a really cool sound system. So this sound system is actually Mr. Adams' sound system, but we bought the next one up. So we don't need to, the good news about that is we don't need to rent anymore for when we do the big talent night and those pictures. Those we have a crazy one now, but we used it last night. And it filled the gym at 4. That was at 4, so it could blow the doors off pretty well. So we have that in-house, so we don't have to be renting that stuff. So there's a possibility, a real possibility of that. One thought that came to my mind was the fact that could you have music in the cafeteria and then the other pit be quiet? So the idea is that that's quiet zone. We can't really spread it out too much because, again, you got to understand, when you're in school here, we are it's called in parentis locus, in place of your parents, that's what we are. So we're responsible for you. So in the cafeteria, you have to be supervised, right? And so that's why we have, the hall monitors who are in the cafeteria at that time. But if we had like 8 different locations, I don't have the people who can supervise that. I have to be responsible for that. So I think if we use the pit, we could do that as well. It's just, there's sometimes it's too spread out. And that's another problem with the hallway. When people are eating the hallway and the stairwell and stuff, I don't have the people who can supervise all those sorts of things. So we do want to really make that, I think that extra area attractive. And if the attractive part is that's the quiet zone, and then there's, a little bit more noise over there, that's a possibility as well. But it's only as quiet as you guys make it, right? So it's up to the responsibility of people who are there to say, well, I know what I'm gonna do when I go there.
Building on using effective spaces, and how you said that we're gonna start using cafe tables in the grade pit. The courtyard is another popular place for students to go during the spring and summertime. But I find that if we put picnic tables in the courtyard, we could effectively use the space, just not on that ledge where people usually sit. So if picnic tables are there, I think it'd be pretty good for students to enjoy the lunch.
Yeah, I've already been approached by the Environmental Council, Dr. Clovis particularly, about could we build their tables, even tables out front. We have those lines of trees that are right in front of the school. So there's been talk about could we build like a circular table around those trees. It's an interesting possibility. But again, you see, if you want stuff done, there's one thing to ask for it. There's another thing to come up with a plan to do it. And then there's another way to say, how do we make sure we keep it? So for instance, here's a concern that I have. There's students eating lunch out front of the school on these great tables, right? And then it starts to look like the hallway, but in front of the school. So people leave garbage, things like that. And then what happens is the front of our school looks terrible. And that's a terrible message to send, right? That's our marquee. That's what people are looking at. So it's got to be up to the people who are out there to say, we're going to take care of that. And so there's a possibility, and there's even some plans in place for things like that. If that's something that you want, make your voice heard about it. But that voice also has to go the other way. There's a responsibility that comes with those things to say, we need to be able to monitor that. We need to be able to go through that. So, like a perfect example is the microwaves in the CAF. Who cleans the microwaves in CAF, Nobody. That's the answer to that question. I can't ask the caretakers to do it. That's not their job. The cafeteria, that's not their job. Again, they're not my staff. They don't report to me. So who cleans those? I can keep buying them. We bought more, right? We moved them around. The problem is that it wasn't that those microwaves were broken. It's that they're all on the same circuit. They're all on the same line. So when people would have all four of those going at the same time, it would blow the circuit. So they weren't. So it seemed like they weren't working, but all it was a trip switch. So we moved them around. We sort of figured it out. Mr. Kuzak, our head caretaker, mapped out all the lines, which took some time, and figured out where there's some independent lines, and that's why we moved them around. I could buy more, but if they're a disgusting mess, then we got to figure that out. So the question is who cleans that? And maybe some suggestions about who would do that would be helpful. But that's just an example, right? For if we do other things, if we move out to the front a little bit, what is that? Who's going to be responsible for that?
About the microwaves, you know how students pack the microwaves with all their food all at once? I think that's a kind of an issue because what if a person is allergic to something that a person put in the microwave with their own food? So I think that there should be rules regarding to the limit of food within the microwave.
And again, there's a difference between rules and there's a difference between practice, right? If we made a rule that you can only put one thing in the microwave at a time, I don't know who's going to monitor that, right? Who's going to watch that? I can't have Tony and Josie and Teresa, the hall monitors, and Russell. I can't have them sitting by the microwaves and wait, because then there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's going on. But what you might want to do is, I never even thought of the fact that the allergy issue. Like if you came to elementary school, remember being in elementary school and the idea if anybody brought a peanut butter sandwich, it would be a lockdown. They'd call a lockdown and shut the school down. But then now all of a sudden it's none of those rules are in the same sort of place here, right? We sort of understand that there's people with very real allergies. And actually, just the other day, we had somebody with a peanut allergy and had to give himself the EpiPen shot in his leg and then had to go to the hospital because he did have a reaction to peanuts. And you understand that peanuts, that's a deadly allergy. That will kill you. So I think what would be interesting is if there was some education around that. So maybe if councils or somebody of concern would say, what if we made a poster that went over that and said, understand allergies. This is why it's a good idea to have one. This is why it's a good idea to disinfect these at the end. And that might be something I think that's a great student movement that would then ensure, we can keep because you know what would happen? If somebody has I guarantee it, if somebody was to have a reaction from food that were in the microwave and they got sick and something happened, I would get a call the very next day, I guarantee it, from safety saying, take all those microwaves out. That's exactly what happened. Take them out, it's a liability, no more. So we got to make sure that you don't go down that road, right? And to say that we're just going to make a rule, we'll make a rule that you guys enforce. That you guys say, hey, look at the sign. Only one at a time. And the other thing is, what I'm hearing is, everybody puts a bunch in there, and then when they open the door, it all slides out, and then stuff falls out, and then stuff is ruined. So again, one at a time. And no tin foil, please. People, don't put tin foil in the microwaves. I've replaced 4 of those microwaves since I've been principal here. That's just silly. When they're on fire, that's the time to shut them off and say, okay, we're not using them anymore.
As for the microwave cleaning, we have volunteers in the CAF, right, who help pass on the food. So we can ask them to clean it as volunteer hours.
Well, there's a possibility to get volunteer. Yeah, we could do something like that. So so it would be a good idea to say put together some ideas for who could do that and how we can keep those clean, because those will keep them running. Those will keep them so that there's not danger to some students who have issues with food allergies, those sorts of things. So that's one option. to see is there's volunteer hour possibilities for that after school or whatever. That's a possibility. You first. Last comment on that.
Last comment on the cafeteria.
Okay, so one suggestion from our classmates was that they should add a debit machine to the cafeteria because apparently she wanted to use her debit card to purchase her food. So I'm not sure if that's a possibility or not, but.
Yeah, again, there's, it's a private company, right? So I saw that on the Twitter hashtag there about debit cards. There's actually been some thoughts about having a debit card machine in the school for like registration, because now we ask for cash, which makes sense, but there's a lot of cash. You got to understand this. Remember that a company pays for that, right? And they actually pay per transaction. So what would happen? I guarantee what would happen if the cafeteria staff there decided to put in the debit machine, which would mean they'd have to have a dedicated line too, right? Because it works for a telephone line. I guarantee the prices would go up, 100%. They would probably say 25 cents per, or what they would say is, if you're using the debit machine, you have to pay 25 cents more. That's what happens. I used to work at the school board. They have a cafeteria at the school board that services the teachers there, and also that's the cafeteria for Cardinal Carter, one of the schools there. And if you use the debit machine, they charge you a 50-cent premium on top of it. So I would use it only because I don't have any cash. And it was one thing for me to have to pay 50 cents, but if people are complaining about the cookies going up 25 cents, imagine if everything went up 50 cents, right? So.
Okay, real quick, last question on the.
Yeah, I just have a last quick suggestion for the cafeterias. So basically, some of the students in my class were wondering if we could have healthier food options. And I know that they've already tried to do that by eradicating like sugar drinks and such. And I know that the cafeteria isn't under your control. However, some people were wondering if they could sell fruit instead in there.
Yeah, and I mean, I am so encouraged by this, and that the fact that every grade so far has said that. And this is, I think, a big difference between your generation and mine. So when I was a student here, everything had to have gravy on it, pretty much was the rule of what we had. So, really, it was like, they had fries with gravy and chili on top of the fries. And then some people would add ketchup. But anyway, that's a really good idea. And there's where suggestions are a really good idea. And I would say, as a business, that's what they are, as a business, you should listen to your customers. And so if I was to say, strike a committee that says, if anybody would want to, or we can do a survey about what you want to see, I think that's a great option, is that they're within the same price point. It's not saying that they can only serve this food. That's not what it says. The regulations say you can't serve these foods. So within that, there's a whole bunch of options of things that you can do. And I would suggest that here's some things you might want to do. You might want to ask friends of yours from other schools, what's served at your cafeteria? Because those cafeterias work under the same parameters as ours do. Some of those schools have this, it's the same company. So it's the same company that runs, I know this company also runs the cafeteria at Mary Ward, but then runs some more up in the York region. So you might want to say, I think Lieberman too, I think they're at Lieberman as well. But you might want to ask them, what are some of the options you have? Well, why can't they have that? Could we have that? And then I would be more than happy to talk to the cafeteria people, because again, I'm one of the people who has to sign their contract, right? So they have a contract that's every, I think, 2 or 3 years, and then we have to renew, or we say, you know what, we're going to try somebody else. So we can say, here's what the student body wants. They would want, some more healthy alternatives. Could we investigate those? And then I would think that you'd start to see that stuff for sure, because it's a business, and if the business isn't responding to their customers, then they're going to go out of business. So that's a great idea. So again, you're all aware, is everybody aware of you might want to talk about the Twitter hashtag as a
yeah, guys, we have the Twitter hashtag, which is JPII Talks. And then there you can post like any problems, or like, not only problems, like ideas that you guys have to make school better. Because like this is the last like 2 years, right? We're trying to improve the school, and like not only for us, like I'm pretty sure you guys have siblings too that are going to be coming to the school. So then you guys can tell us about your problems and then solutions that you guys might have. And then one of the problems that I want to touch on is school safety. You guys feel safe at school, or like you feel like hope is a good place to be, or like not only that, like what can we do about it? Do you have problems?
This is a serious issue, right? This is always a serious issue, and everybody knows that it is in every school. The Education Act has a big long list of stuff that I do, right? That it defines the principal's role. And the first one, the absolute first one, before academics, before any of that stuff, the first one is to say maintain a safe school. That's the first one, a safe and secure environment. So it would be silly to have a student voice initiative that doesn't talk about, is there concerns, is there areas that you think there's need, and not just safety, meaning safety against violence and those sorts of things, but safety within the school. Are there any concerns about facilities that you think are unsafe, or areas that seem a little dodgy, or those sorts of things? Is there any of those things that you might want to comment on as well? I don't know if the class discussion went there at all.
So some of the students in my class were thinking about a crossing, and because some of the students who get off at the 116 area around Tams, they'll have to walk through like the neighborhood and then cross the street. And I know a lot of cars come in there to drop their, like a lot of parents come in there to drop their kids off, but kids just kind of walk in between the cars, and I don't think it's really safe, and we're not really sure when to cross, so we kind of just guess and go. And some kids like come close to being hit and stuff like that. So I think that's an issue that we should address.
That's great, and that came up actually, this is the second time that grade 10's mentioned that as well. I would say this for sure, that road has been an issue since the beginning of time when I was a student here. And there's some things that have happened because of that. The neighborhood has actually grown quite a bit since in the last, even 10 years. Because you understand, like that whole Bonspiel, all the houses back there, when I was a student there was nothing there. That was all just empty fields. So you can imagine all those cars, and there was no way for cars to get in from there. And in fact, if you notice, and I just noticed this the other day, between the hours of 7 o'clock in the morning and 9 a.m., you can't turn into that street for that very reason, right? And that's why they've gotten input from those neighbors, obviously, to say there's just cars going through here all the time. It's not safe for the kids who are walking in there, but it's also bottlenecks. There's a few things that I would say that we can do about it. There's very limited stuff that I can do as far as I can't just put a crosswalk up there, right? I can petition to have that, and I'll definitely talk to some people. There's city councilors and those sorts of people who put that in, definitely. But there's some things that you guys can do as well. One of those things is you should tell your parents, please do not drop me at the front door, right? Because it's just a disaster. And the one that I see about this is when you come in the driveway and then they stop right there to let you out because my locker is right here. Well, the problem with that is it backs up. So there's a reason why the only place that you guys should be dropped off is in the back doors. Either right there, or even better down at the farther end, because there's a lot more movement and there's a lot more flow. So the first thing that you guys can do to help with that is to say, Mom and Dad, don't drop me off there. Go all the way around. And definitely don't let your parents come back out that driveway, because that's a mess. But you're absolutely right. I mean, there's some value there to the fact of, could we talk to Officer Dave, right? I mean, he's in Toronto Police for 43 Division, and could we have a conversation with him about what can we do? How do we go about that? Could we talk to our city councilors, who are always looking for input from the community? Again, that's where your parents' voice really does have impact, right? Is if they were to call their city councilor, if I call, they're like, yeah, good for you. I don't even live in this district, so I can't vote for them. So, but if your parents who do vote these people into office call and say, this is a concern, absolutely that's something that they could do, but absolutely something that I can reach out to as well and say, perhaps a crosswalk. I mean, there's a crosswalk down by the elementary school. There might be some concerns about traffic flow if there's another one 200 yards up the road. But I think all you need to do is take a video of what happens in the morning out there, and you can see that there's an obvious need for that. So again, the encouragement would be, is don't let I know what your parents are gonna do. My dad did the same thing when they dropped me off. He would go into the TAM parking lot, drop me off, and then come out, because he didn't want to have to go through the whole school. But my suggestion would be, if everybody went through and dropped off the back doors and then went out the other exit and came out, the flow would be a lot better. The problem is people stop either on Military to drop people off, and then, or they're stopping in the driveway and moving. Okay, so obviously I think that's definitely something that we can do.
One of the issues that I had was that my bike got stolen 2 weeks ago. And not just mine, there was a couple of students that their bike got stolen too. So then what could we do about that? Because like we feel like school's safe, and then we bring our bike and we want to like back to school and like, get the greasy morning and stuff. But then people can't do that anymore, because like they don't feel safe leaving their bike in the fat area or whatever. So then, yeah, what can we do about that? Because like that's
Yeah, and to be honest, that was a surprise to me. I know I had some people come to me with that one, even the ones. I mean, sometimes people will tie their bike up to the fence over on the other side by the track, and the problem with that is that's way far away from. I mean, it's easy for someone to go in there and not be seen. But when they're doing it right out of here, and we actually caught somebody on video doing that, because we have a surveillance camera that does look out there. So that was given to Officer Dave, and he's looking into those sorts of things, and he's given it to people who investigate crime and the department to see if anybody recognizes. It wasn't one of our people; it was somebody who came in and did it. So yeah, there's definitely concern. Some people have said if we move those closer, where would we be able to move those closer to the building so that people would be less, especially people from outside the community, would be less likely to go in and get them for sure. Could we do something at the back of the school? We'll have to take a look at that. I'll have to talk to the custodians and say, is there a better place to put a rack so that there's a camera right on it, and that it's close enough so that we could actually deter people from wanting to come in and take them. I would say the one thing to do is don't get those weak little chain locks, right? You got to have the hardcore one that's not going to. Because we saw the person did it, they just came with snippers and just popped out and was gone. It was like gone in like 2 seconds. Because the chain was really weak. You should get the U chain, the one that's like,
Oh, about the parking lot. We should have like signs that says "Do not enter" for like people who are coming in. There should be like an entrance sign and an exit sign, so parents don't get confused when they're dropping their kids off at school, so they have to go through the whole thing.
Yeah, there is some signs. There are some signs that have like the one way, and there's a one way out that way too, to say that you're not supposed to be going out this way at all. So there's some of those things, but we might want to look at that signage as well, and maybe there's suggestions that you guys could do. That's why that Twitter hashtag is a real good one. You might want to say, like, take a picture, snap a quick picture, and say, this would be a great place for a sign right here, or look at what I see, or take a picture when you're coming in and saying, this is what I got to cross to come in, right? Because the thing is with that JP Pulse, there's other people who are monitoring that now, right? So I monitor it, I look at it all the time. But there's even some people at the board. So one of the superintendents is coming and saying, oh, this is fantastic. I'm looking at this all the time. So if all of a sudden somebody, because the board has a little bit more money than we do, so it's like, oh, this is great. So there's suggestions there. As long as they're positive, right? The best way to have people ignore you is to just complain and complain and complain and complain, or to be nasty about it, and people are going to ignore them. But if you're offering suggestions, if you're being proactive and constructive, people will listen.
Anyone else with anything to say about school safety? How do you feel? Yeah.
In my class, they were discussing how people were like being hurt like by people like they don't know around like the school block. So my class was suggesting that they should at least have like a self-defense class, so that way like if anyone's trying to grab them, they might as well like protect themselves. So I was suggest.
So you're talking about in the neighborhood, other stuff that's happening in the neighborhood. Yeah, and there's a good idea there. I know that I think last year the Pink Panthers had some self-defense initiatives and things like that. And we have some people who could do that. There's a possibility there as well. What I'd like to say though around that is, there's always the idea of some smart thinking when it comes to your general safety. And that doesn't apply just here. That applies to when you go on to university or college or workplace or your whole life. Some things to think about when you're doing some things. So there's certain places that you shouldn't walk. There's certain places that you shouldn't walk by yourself. Be heads up. There's certain places that, at night, what do you do? What side of the sidewalk do you walk on? Do you walk on the one that has a sidewalk or one that doesn't? Do you walk on the one that has as you're walking, you see that two of the light posts lamps are out, so you kind of cross and go to the other side. Those sorts of things as well. But also let us know. So let us know to say, there's issues that are happening in this spot. Because again, having Officer Dave here, that school resource officer, is a huge thing, because he can simply call and say, can we have some eyes on this spot, right? And there seems to be issues here. The more we hear, and it's not, people think, well, I don't want to be a rat or a tattletale or those sorts of things. This is keeping everybody safe. That's the whole point. And so we don't need to have names necessarily. We just need to say, there's a concern here. And then we can respond to that. It's a great program to have. Let's take advantage of the fact that we have someone here who can actually do something about outside of it. I always say I have influence out to the sidewalk, right? And then my influence about what I can do kind of ends. But the police have influence everywhere. So there's a possibility that let's use it to keep us, to keep everybody safe, for sure.
Okay, so we are down to our last 10 minutes of discussion. I know you guys have a lot of ideas that were brought up in your homerooms. Just to build on the thought that as grade 11s, we're more than halfway through our high school life. We just want to get your feedback on what the school has, what impact has the school been on you in regards to specifically councils, what we have done great that's makes you feel welcome, and what gives you the ability to call home, and what we could do better for future generations as to making people feel welcome and really, as I said, calling Pope home. So what makes Pope home?
Well, personally for me at Pope, I got involved in a lot of activities like in school, with school. So by having all these options that we can join different clubs, councils, teams, it's actually really good because we get to know other members of the community in various grades, and they become so close to you that they're basically your family now, and the place that we all get to come together is Pope, which is, yeah, the home.
That's a good thing because there are some people that says, do we need to scale back? So some people think, do we need to scale back the amount of clubs and activities just because there's so many and everybody's calling themselves councils and all of this, and do we keep doing that? Is there an expense to it? You guys do a pretty good job of maintaining that without there being too much expense to the school, which is good, but I don't mind that. So the more that we hear about, and we hear this a lot now, but the more that we hear about the fact that no, keep it going, more and more, it really helps us to say, that's what we're going to support.
At open house last night, I got to talk to some of the parents, and when we were telling them about some of our clubs and councils, they were really interested in how we're different from other schools because they didn't have some of these teams and councils, but they found it really interesting and they kind of wanted their kids to come here after that.
Message heard, thank you.
So it's my third year at Pope, being in grade 11. Like, it took me a while to get to love Pope the way I do now. Like, it's my first year on council, on PAC, and like, I'm absolutely loving it. Like, from grade 9 to grade 11 now, I'm loving every moment, like every event going on. And we get to express ourselves in different ways and express who we are as individuals, as a community too. And I really love it.
That's great. That's a great sound clip. I'm going to use that one for sure. Okay, so some quick feedback though. The Wi-Fi and the portables is a really good addition in our opinion because it helps us with the MacBooks, the iPads, etc. It really helps our education. I see that as not a really great addition, but something that should have been there a long time ago. So that's a bare minimum. That's what that is. We're going to be doing more stuff, but that's a bare minimum. But it's good that it's being used with that one.
Okay, so I'm here to represent Environmental Council, and we just, because of the cancellation of our environmental assembly, we've been brainstorming a lot of events that we could possibly do to involve the whole school to keep up our title of an eco-friendly school, right? So one of our ideas was a sculpting contest out of trash, like plastic bottles, to represent how it is a detrimental aspect to our environment. And we were wondering whether you guys would be interested in doing it by class, because we know that some teachers may not want to provide some of their class time because they might see it as a waste of time. But so we could do it by class or by grade. We were wondering what you guys would prefer.
And maybe that's something to discuss, and we can put that out there to, on the pulse, sort of see what do you think and get some feedback from that, because a new idea, let's vet it out there.
with the co-ed ultimate frisbee team, people in my class suggested a co-ed lacrosse team. Or it doesn't have to be like against other schools, because I know some schools don't have a lacrosse team, but within our schools, like we can like have tournaments within our school for like lacrosse and stuff.
So again, there's that call for intramurals, right? And that's what that's what that is. So intramurals within the school. There's some obstacles or things that you got to consider when you're considering intramurals. Supervision. When does it happen? How do you make it happen? We have 2 lunches, so do you have lunchtime ones? Do you have after school ones? We've had them in the past year before. When I was a student here, we had a very active intramural basketball program after school. Even when I came back as a student teacher here as well, and we had like a flag football. That was before, going back when I started teaching, all that parking lot and where the swim facility is, all that stuff was just empty field. So that was a lot of space that we could use for that. So there was a lot of opportunities for sure, and maybe there's a call to do that again.
Last one for today.
I just wanted to bring up the issue about the library being closed at second lunch, right? So if me and my friend both have the same first period class, and we have something due last period, and he has first lunch, he's able to print his assignment out, but I can't, right? So I just wanted to bring that up. It's not necessarily an issue about the library being open at lunch, but second lunch, but if we could maybe find an alternative, like a room where we just print stuff out.
Yeah, and again, that was an issue that's brought up before. The fact of that is that the fact that we're staffed, so we have we're given a staffing model by the board, and what we have is X number of sections. We don't even know the exact details about it, but we can't keep the library open with us teacher staff for the amount of periods that there are, because there's 2 different lunches. So there is some thoughts about how do we actually have, is there a way to have a kiosk printing station that's available at all times? So we've actually looked at the Environmental Council actually put the $25,000 that they won for the Staples grant, actually looked into that. So the idea is, could we have just a printer that all you do is just a printer that's outside, and there's a coin that you could pay for it, and you can just stick a USB in and it'll print whatever you want. You can print it without having to come in the library. We looked at that. There wasn't the options right away on that, and so we're still investigating that a little bit, but what are the best ways? Where would that be? Where could we locate that? Those sorts of things. So the more that comes up is to say, yeah, that's a real issue. So we're looking into that for sure. Is what's an alternative option to what we currently have?
Okay, so unfortunately, we are running out of time. However, do know that all of your suggestions were heard, and that every comment made today does matter, and we are taking that into consideration moving forward. And that it doesn't just stop here. You can go on Twitter. We have our hashtag JPII All-Star. I always call it both. And as well as you have your councils. You have PAC, ELC, HAT, and many others. And we all do have Twitter accounts as well. So just keep the communication open and continue to voice your opinion. Doesn't matter how small, how big, it all really does help to ensure that your experience here at POE is better, because a healthy mind is a healthy body, and it all coincides, it all correlates together. And if you're not happy, then it will affect your academics as well. So
that's great. And I would also say this isn't the last of the town halls, right? My hope is that we have about 3 of these a year. Probably next year would be a little bit more, like earlier, and then January, February-ish, and then at the end of the year, sort of look back and go forward. So we will have those, and we're always looking at the councils and the administration will be again to sort of say, okay, going from there, what can we do? Take all the notes. What are the things that we can do right now? What are the things that are long-term? And then where do we go from there? I'd like to see a town hall that talks about, let's talk about your learning, really about that. How can we help with that? But these are the things that are most pressing to you that we could get that right now. And there's different topics along the way. So thank you so much for that. But it's going to continue for sure. Okay? Thanks so much, guys.